Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today we're going to take a look at this little Talkpod A36Plus. I see that other YouTubers are reviewing it too, so I'll give you my review of it. So I've taken lots of pictures and put them all in a set of charts, so let's take a look at that. So in our review of the Talkpod A36Plus, we're going to talk first about an FCC issue. Then we'll go into the usual what's in the box, reviews, test data, and a conclusion. This is what the end of the box looks like. It looks tame enough. A36Plus radio ham, walkie-talkie new. Okay, there's the model number, and there's the FCC idea. 2ADQZ is the company, and GMRS1 is the model number. And it says GMRS all over it. GMRS portable transceiver. Welcome to the world of GMRS communications. I looked up the FCC, and here is an excerpt from their declaration letter. We declared that our product, A36Plus, the product has locked the transmit frequency to 30 channels by firmware. That would be the GMRS channels. And then end users could not unlock the limited band out of range, neither by software programming on PC nor manual programming. Okay, that's a pretty strong statement. It will get a failed message if the end users program the transmit range out of the frequency. Now, not all hams are familiar with GMRS, so let's just take a little side view. It's in Part 95, which are the personal radio services. There's some general rules, and then some things you may be familiar with. Family radio service, radio control, CB, GMRS, general mobile radio service, subpart E. Some sort of a little service up in the 1.25 meter range. There's a low power, wireless medical device, a multi-use radio service, or MERS. We have looked at that before, and some other stuff, okay? So here's what the GMRS is. And this is interesting, I think, for hams who are doing emergency planning. A mobile two-way voice communication service with limited data applications for facilitating activities of individual licensees and their family members, including, but not limited to, voluntary provision of assistance to the public during emergencies and natural disasters. Should we be writing this into our various emergency plans? By the way, here are the channels, the 30 channels that were mentioned. Let's look at what Amazon has to say about it. Talkpod A36Plus GMRS handheld, two-way radio, talkies for adults. And then it says a lot of receivers, 5 watts output, and so on. Now, that's the title. Lots of pictures. Now, let's go down a little bit on that page where it says about this item. Transmit range, it shows GMRS, that's fine. 512 channels, analog FM ham, two-way transceiver, and this is dual watch with VHF, UHF, VHF, pre-programmed for ham, true power VHF, true power, 5.2.5 watts here, okay? And then it gives that same FCC ID, which is, there's the model number, GMRS1, with very wide broadcast receivers. AM air band, broadcast FM radio, it says with 20 memories. I could never find those. VFO modes, it says transmit lock to ham frequencies. That is not true. Wide narrow bandwidth, Okay, and it's got a nice display and does wonderful things and so on. So, looking in the Q&A, I printed this off the other day. Question, this is just GMRS and not ham, correct? Can it be converted to transmit on ham? And here from somebody called Silent Gloves, turn the radio off, then press and hold the PTT button +6. While continuing to hold, turn the radio on. This will unlock transmit on 2 meters and 70 centimeters, as well as a whole bunch of other frequencies. Oh my goodness. That seems to contradict directly what that assertion letter had to say. Well, anyway, let's take a look at what's in the box. You've got this, I got one that's a clear, sort of a translucent plastic, so you can kind of see what's inside it. An antenna, belt clip. There's 2 different charging methods. You can plug this into the wall and put the transceiver in here. Or you can use a little USB thing. This can plug into here, or any appropriate USB like in your truck or something. And then this is a USB-C, which connects right into the bottom, into the battery. And then we have a sort of a manual. I will go so far as to say it's half a manual. Here is the programming cord. This comes with it too. Note, a lot of these take these same buttons and bring the cord out the side. This just brings it out the side here. It's a little easier to deal with, I think. Well, how good of a transmitter is this? I used my tiny, or not tiny, but simple spectrum analyzer, and this is what I got on 2 meters. Now this is 150 megahertz. No, this is 100 megahertz, so this is 150. This is a spur. This is the second harmonic. Note that the second harmonic is bigger than the fundamental. That's kind of weird. And look at all these harmonics out here all the way up to 800 megahertz. Now if we try it on 440, okay, it comes up here. We don't see anything after that, but unfortunately the second harmonic would be past what this meter can receive. So I thought, okay, I've got to get out my big spectrum analyzer. This is the test setup going right into this little sampler right here. This goes to the spectrum analyzer, that to a dummy load. And this is what I got on 2 meters. Now each of these things here is 150 megahertz. So here's your fundamental on 2 meters. Here's a spur way down. Here is the second harmonic that is actually larger than the fundamental. Isn't that weird? And then we've got a third, fourth, fifth harmonic, which are only 30 dB, well, about 20 dB down. And third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. Just harmonics going straight up the system. Now, I thought this was really weird here, the fact that the second harmonic was stronger than the fundamental. So I turned to my little SDR Play RSP1A, and this is at 146.52, okay? And notice serial or a signal to noise ratio 57.7 dB. And so now I went to that second harmonic 293 and get 56.6 signal to noise ratio, which is what, 1 dB less than on the fundamental. So fundamentally, you're going to be putting out, instead of 5 watts, you're going to be putting out 2.5 watts on 146 and another 2.5 watts, who knows where, on the second harmonic. That's interesting. Now let's look on the good scope at 70 centimeters. Here is your frequency right here, and that's 150, 300, 450, almost 450. Here's that spur. But notice that the second harmonic, this is down about 3 dB from the top. So we can take about 3 dB off of this and 60 dB down. Now that's not bad for Chinese radio. Okay, this thing, when in UHF actually does pretty good, okay? Now, that's interesting. Well, let's take a look at the manual. We've got to do that. There's some very tiny print. You need a fairly high power magnifying glass and some bright light. The manual does not describe basic functions such as switching between the upper and lower frequency register, switching between VFO to memory, and so on. The top button, short press, is high-low power, long press is scan. Bottom button, short press, is FM broadcast. Long press is reverse listening without the squelch. The AB button on the face of this switches between the upper and lower screens. So you can get your upper or lower registers to see what you want. It's set up so that the upper is a VFO and the lower is a channel thing. Now, the manual also offers no explanation of the icons on the screen, so you'd better be a good guesser. Now, as far as programming it, you want to program it with Chirp. You can get Chirp at chirp.danplanet.com. I warn you to beware of misleading advertising. Make sure you get the latest. They update this software every few days. This directly supports the A36Plus. So you plug your programming cable into the radio, connect it to the computer. The cable will install, check the device driver for the COM port, and then open Chirp. So I just wanted to show you this right up here is misleading advertising. It says get it, but you get something else. What you really want to do is download Chirp for your platform. Right there is where you hit it, okay? And then the next page that comes up, again, has, they want money, but this over here is misleading advertising. This downloads some sort of drivers that have nothing to do with Chirp. I know Chirp needs the money, but I wish they wouldn't put these ads in there. Anyway, Chirp Next is what you want. Download the latest Chirp Next build here. That's where you want to click. This is what you want to download, Chirp Next. It tells you the installation 0803, which is today, and that's the one that you want. After you plug in your programming cable, you find out the number for it. Now, the COM port 1, I happen to know, is my ICOM 7300. So this will be the one that I use. Now, when you start Chirp, you start communicate with radio. You put in the COM port here, the vendor, Talkpod, and the model, A36Plus, and then click OK, and it will download what's in the radio. This is what's in the radio, plus one other that I just happened to hold. Now, here's your frequencies. You can give it a name, whether it needs a tone, what the tone is. You can come over here to the offset, duplex plus offset 0.600 FM. Skip is whether you want to skip it in a scan. The ones that do not have the skip in it will end up in the scan in high or low power. Okay, now note here, memories, settings. If you go to settings, these are all the settings that you can get to through the software. This is not necessarily every setting on the radio. Okay, so you'll, after you have used this for a while, you'll want to look at other things. Miscellany. The advertised 5 2.5 watt power, I can't find the half watt. I can find 5, which is high, and 2, which is low. Okay? Now, after no button is pressed for a while, the screen goes completely dark. Now, you can press any button to bring the screen back. Unfortunately, you get that button's function as well. So if you like, just pop the push to talk button. You're actually going to transmit a little burst while you do that in order to get your screen back. There ought to be a way to get the screen back without actually triggering any function. The radio very happily transmits outside ham bands. I hate that about the Chinese radios. I think that's a bad idea because anybody who gets it can also transmit inside our ham bands. I can't find any of the promised 20 FM broadcast memories. It does listen to air bands on AM. This is the first radio I've seen that actually does that. It also has a safety warning not to use within 1 inch from your body when transmitting. So here's our outbrief. This is a radio designed for GMRS. The manufacturer takes advantage of internal software to transmit on many other frequencies. It's an okay ham radio on 70 centimeters, but it's not a good 2-meter radio. It transmits more than half its power on the second harmonic. Wow. Now, there are several versions of this on Amazon, if you look it up. On Amazon, when you look at Amazon, there's a B code in the URL. It's 8 or 10 digits long. And this is actually a unique code for every item out there. You can get different versions of it, but they're all the same. Okay. It's very easily programmable. I have no heartburn with programming. So there you have it. We've taken a look at this radio. It's an interesting radio. One would think ordinarily it's like an old UV5R or something like that. But the thing, I think the output section was designed for GMRS. It seems to work okay in the 450 range. But you get down to 144 where our 2-meter band is, and it's putting out more than half its power on the second harmonic. That is just not acceptable. Do I recommend this radio? No. You can get perfectly good radios for the same amount of money. Okay? So, there you have it. If you end up with one, yeah, sure, use it on 70 centimeters. It'll work just fine. So, until we next meet, 73.